Hello and welcome to another episode of Indie Thinking Live. Thank you so much for joining. I am Kyle O'Brien, managing editor of Indie Agency News. We are talking sports today, and more specifically, we are talking women's sports and the marketing opportunities that come with them. We're going to dig into the $500 million women's sports moment. And that's going to come up right here in just a second. But let's talk a little bit about women's sports. It's obviously on the rise. There's going to be 4 new WNBA teams joining the league by 2030. So there's tons of opportunities coming up for marketing. But what really caught our attention was the Golden State Valkyries. They just became the first women's sports franchise with worth 500 million in their inaugural season. And so WNBA team valuations jumped 180% in 1 year. But here's the real opportunity. We're in this narrow window before women's sports partnerships become commoditized corporate checkbox behavior. So let's bring in somebody to talk about that knows quite a bit about women's sports. AYDAN Sarakaya. Forgive me about that. We're going to add you right now. It was like,
Thanks,
I'm not
Kyle.
going to
Not to
trip over
worry.
this. Great to see you. Thank you. And obviously, you've got some strategic expertise, and combined with Territorial's cultural analysis approach, makes you perfect to explore this. So also, you were, and probably still are, an athlete, because as we used to say at Nike, if you have a body, you are an athlete.
Oh, I
But
love
uh,
that.
you but you were a member of the Boston College NCAA Division I women's swim team. And tell everyone what your stroke was.
I was a middle to long distance freestyler.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So let's talk about the numbers here. You joined Territorial as a partner of business strategy right as women's sports valuations started exploding. Obviously, we're in a great moment for that. But when you saw the Valkyries hit 500 million in their first season, which is just amazing to me, what was your
Amazing.
strategic read on what this means for clients and the indies typical that you work with?
It's such a great question and a great place to start. There are a number of quotes being thrown around lately, like women's sports is big business. And I and us at Territorial are firm believers in that. We used to wait and have these downtimes in between the different Olympics to see our favorite female athletes. And now, more and more, especially with some of these new media deals, we're able to see them everywhere that we already see so many of our favorite men's leagues.
Mhm.
So it's just such an exciting time for authentic storytelling, for brands to reach female audiences in places that they haven't met audiences before. And also opportunities for brands to help elevate and make more of these sports leagues known. So there's just an abundance of opportunity in the space right now.
Yeah, so let's talk about some of those opportunities, and obviously there are risks to go along with that too. But
Yeah.
from a business strategy perspective, what's the cost of waiting out versus jumping in right now? And how do you kind of evaluate where you should be as a business or an agency?
Yeah, there's such an opportunity to get in now while the leagues are starting to grow. So when we think about indie agencies and where we play within the ecosystem, we have an opportunity to help craft some of these stories. And also on the brand side, you have an opportunity to help craft the story, the mythology, the storytelling around the sports players and the sports and the athletes that you're supporting. So there's just a huge opportunity in terms of long-term growth in these types of partnerships. So we see a lot of brands that are starting to get involved that have a lot of financial means, but they're also doing it in new and innovative ways and getting to try new ways to reach audiences. There's an example of Sephora actually dropping bags in a game, in a WNBA game. So sending out free merch in that way, which is really exciting to see.
Yeah, and I mean, and getting in kind of on the ground floor, you get to help, as you said, shape the kind of how they're talking to their fans, and really kind of be on the ground floor like that. I mean, we just talked about off camera about the Valkyries launching their new mascot, and obviously there was a lot going into that. They had a whole backstory, and they put
Yeah.
this egg out and they hatched it, and suddenly Vi, the new mascot, was out there. So there are obviously a bunch of opportunities. But what what about the business strategy approach? What are the foundational criteria that you assess before recommending women's sports partnerships to a client, and what is the framework that you use to evaluate that?
That's a great question. Yeah, I think the biggest thing for us is thinking about authenticity. It's so much more than a logo moment to invest in a women's sport. It's not necessarily the same situation like when you're investing or doing a sport partnership with the NBA, for example. You know that people are going to see you. For the WNBA, you know people are going to see you, but it's also a moment to create a moment with that particular sport. So, how does this relate to the values and objectives of your organization? Where does the brand fit make sense? Where can you draw in emotional connections? Because again, we're thinking about it in terms of long-term value.
Right.
What can we also grow? And then, of course, target audience and reach. And in this really interesting political environment that we're in, we know that people are starting to roll back a little bit on DEI initiatives. And so, how can we actually, and a lot of these organizations do have pledges for 50-50 in terms of their sports marketing.
Right.
So, there's an opportunity for people to also elevate those in these moments of, we are an organization that believes in, equity as much as possible, and here's actually how we're putting that into practice by supporting maybe an underserved league or an athlete, a rookie athlete that's just coming up into the space.
Yeah, I mean, it is interesting and, unfortunately, also sad to see this rollback. But I mean, how because women's sports in the first place, it's already, there's equity is kind of built into what it is. But how do you get people to think beyond that and without suffering backlash? It's really kind of a fine line to tread there, I would think.
It is. I think there are some brands that are doing a really great job. Ally, the financial firm, is the official banking partner of the WNBA, I believe, and they found a way to really bring financial education to part of their story of working with the WNBA. And so already you're starting to get some authenticity from a brand that maybe you don't immediately equate with. Sports. And interestingly enough, and I think they do call it the 50-50 pledge, they do spend half of their sports marketing budget towards women's sports. So they're bringing all parts of their business, their ethos, their values that they have as an organization to the work that they're doing. And even did some live activations, I believe, during All-Star Weekend just a few weeks ago. So the opportunity is there. I think it does require some of that strategic work up front to make sure that you're really mapping the opportunities in ways that make sense for the organization. But the reminder here is that the fans of women's sports are not only women. It is also a mixed audience. And there are some sports that are actually seeing their viewership 50-50 across the gender divide. So what that tells us is that there's just more people in a new place where maybe we haven't reached them before. So I think that's the exciting bit.
Right. I mean, and especially true for team sports. So, going back to what indies can do, I mean, obviously, uh, big agencies have relationships with a lot of these major WNBA teams and some of the other bigger leagues, but indies often work with the mid market brands that could benefit most from partnering up with these teams. So how does that resource constraint like actually become a strategic advantage to getting in the door and being a part of this whole thing?
Really two pieces. There's an opportunity to be choiceful and an opportunity to be creative. So, of course, those mid market organizations might not have these huge brand budgets. And going into one of the more established leagues like the NFL or the NBA isn't really an opportunity for them. And then on the flip side, maybe the indies don't have a relationship with those, Sephora's of the world. But if you can find kind of that matching connection between the agency and the brand that are sitting in these mid-market or indie spaces, there's an opportunity to really stand out in terms of the work that you put out. And of course, again, you're getting in on the ground moment. So the longer you wait, the more established the sport is going to become, and the more similar it's probably going to become to those ecosystems of those large scale leagues that we already are familiar with. So choiceful and creativity. I mean, if you're a flatter organization, take advantage of the fact that you're a flatter organization and that you can do something a little bit more daring or bold. And same goes for the indies. This is an opportunity to take a bit of a big swing with your partner and really show what that dual team can do in the marketing space.
Sure, and well, how do you express kind of that value that you can bring, or the uniqueness that you can bring to obviously we're talking a lot of basketball here, but there are tons of other leagues that are on the rise. So
Yeah.
how do you kind of get in there and express that value as a brand, as an agency?
I think it's the emotional aspects that are really, and the storytelling is kind of how we've been talking about it within our organization. Because a lot of these are newer, either athletes, newer leagues that are coming to bear, or maybe they're even new events for established leagues, like kind of the key capstone events. There's opportunity to create emotional connection because ultimately you're creating, once you create a fan, they can become a fan for life. So there's a lot of affinity towards sports over our lifetime. Kyle and I were chatting about all of the different sport teams we support after moving around, over the course of
Mhm.
our lives. So that those emotional connections, those storytelling opportunities, and how those stories come to life. There's been a lot of news actually recently about pre-game events and activities that are actually happening within the stadiums themselves. I was also reading something recently that was talking about how there was a significant increase in for the WNBA team in New York, the New York Liberties, merch sales on non-game days. So people were actually going to Barclays Center to buy merch on days that were not game
Wow.
affiliated, which is pretty incredible, right?
Yeah. That's so great, and I love hearing that because, you usually associate it as, okay, the new quarterback for whatever NFL team, and that's kind of the extent of it, but I
Yeah.
love the fact that people are really getting kicking in their fandom so much that they're traveling on non-game days and getting these. So, let's talk about obviously the expansion of the WNBA is coming up. Fast forward to it, so they're launching media deals, are kicking in, and then corporate America obviously has already jumped on board with the WNBA, but it's going to be even more so with the new teams. What separates the indies who position their clients early from those scrambling to catch up? And it obviously gets back to getting in early.
Completely. I think that's like the main thorough line here is really getting those relationships are gonna be a lot harder and a lot more valuable in terms of the monetary, commitments aligned with those. So,
Mm.
there's also opportunity to be mentioned in certain sports right now there are several new sports leagues that are being established where organizations are coming in as founding members, and their names are actually associated with the names of the leagues. So there's just so much more opportunity now, and we know that these things are growing, and we can see the growth over time. And I think the WNBA is one of the best examples that we have right now in terms of exploding valuations. I know they say that the league is not profitable yet, but we can assume that if we continue on this trajectory and we continue on this level of investment or continued investment, that it will continue to be more profitable. I think it's also an exciting way to get involved in an ecosystem that maybe brands haven't necessarily ventured into before, because maybe the barrier to entry was too high with some of these
Right.
more established leagues. So again, we're reaching audiences that maybe we were never able to reach in this way previously. And so there's a lot of opportunity for, again, it's thinking about the philanthropic side of our organization. Maybe it's our DEI or whatever we're calling that today side of our organization that we weren't able to tap into, but we're able to do it in a culturally relevant way, even despite, the political climate today.
Sure. And I mean, you mentioned a bit about profitability, but a league doesn't have to be profitable for a brand to take advantage of that and gain
Exactly
profitability
right.
for themselves and limelight. So
And it's a
there,
bit of a self-fulfilling ecosystem, right? If the brand invests in this emerging league and they help bring more people to that league, and that sport continues to grow, and there are more fans that come there, then there are more fans that start to see that brand that's involved in the league. So it's kind of a symbiotic, growing ecosystem for brands and the leagues, the sports themselves.
Gotcha. A couple of quick hit questions. So, if 67% of women's sports fans support sponsoring brands, but most corporate partnerships still feel performative, what's the biggest opportunity CMOs are missing?
The authenticity. What's the story behind it? Why should they care? Why are the fans interested? How can you ensure that you're getting fan engagement from the marketing that you're putting out, whether it's physically, whether it's digitally? How do you get them to see themselves in the stories that you're telling?
Got it. All right. One thing every CMO should stop buying from agencies when it comes to cultural partnerships.
Videos without placement. Making videos is great, and I love all of the production partners we are so lucky to work with at Territorial, but as organizations, we should also think about where people are gonna see these. Where are they gonna live? They shouldn't just live in our YouTube. We wanna make sure that people are finding us in all of the different channels that they have at their disposal, and maybe YouTube's where it's hosted, but let's figure out how else to get it into the eyes and hands of the fans.
Great. And then what questions should CMOs ask about women's sports partnerships that would separate the strategic agencies from the tactical ones?
I think it's what strategy are you bringing to bear? I think I alluded to this a little bit in terms of the value evaluation of your brand and thinking about those emotional connections. There's definitely opportunity for strategic agencies to get involved and help shape how those partnerships can have longevity over time. So don't cut the strategy short. That's going to yield dividends and returns for quite some time.
Absolutely. Any parting shots you want to give on this subject?
I think it is just an exciting moment, and let yourself go down the rabbit hole of all of the exciting new leagues that are out there. There's a new women's soccer professional league. There are women's lacrosse leagues, volleyball, you name it. Almost every sport has one today, and they're just starting. Maybe they're a year, 3 years in. So take some time, look up those leagues, and give them your love and support.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for talking with us about this. This is amazing. And if they want to get in touch with you or with Territorial, how can they do that?
You can do that as checking out our website at weareterritorial.com. Feel free to send us an email at hi@weareterritorial.com too, or look me up on LinkedIn, message me. I'm happy to have a chat.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you so much. It's been great talking with you. So let's wrap this up and say, go get them with all the women's sports. Go get your dollars. Go get your opportunities. They're all out there right now. All right. Thank you so much, and thanks everybody for
Anytime.
listening. And we will talk soon. Stay on because we're gonna end the stream here.
Sounds good.